really sink our teeth into. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to get in on the discussion. So, speaking of the Cowboys job, Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network was on television this morning talking about just what decisions are going to have to be made in Dallas.
Yeah, as soon as the Cowboys suffered that kind of defeat with the entire world watching, all the speculation and all the eyeballs went to the job status of head coach Mike McCarthy. And look, it is no surprise that if you're the Cowboys coach, speculation, wondering about your job, I mean, that all comes with it. I mean, it seems like he's been the head coach for 4 years. Seems like it's been 4 years of wondering, when is Jerry Jones simply going to move on? One playoff win in 4 years. He is entering the final year of his 5-year contract that he initially signed. That generally indicates decision time for an organization. Jerry Jones was asked after the game about the job status of Mike McCarthy. Basically said he was not going to go there, wouldn't say when he would sit down with McCarthy, wouldn't even say that he considered a potential change. But I think it's fair to say the Cowboys have a significant decision coming over the next several hours, day, maybe day and a half, something like that, just to make sure they know which direction the organization is going. Certainly moving on from Mike McCarthy is a consideration, my understanding is, for the Dallas Cowboys. Not saying it's definite, but it is a consideration. And when you have head coaches out there and many other teams, 7 to be exact, are going through their head coaching search, if you are going to make a decision, it behooves you to do it sooner rather than later. And the fact that Bill Belichick is still out there, the greatest coach of all time. I know he has a close relationship with the Joneses, certainly something that would have to be added to the equation.
Interesting. I can't imagine that many people are thinking that Bill Belichick and Jerry Jones would work together, but that was something that Jason Garrett spoke to last night. I can't remember if it was halftime, pregame, or postgame, that the relationship between Jerry Jones and Bill Belichick, why wouldn't they be? They've been in the league together for decades and decades at this point. They would have to have some kind of working relationship. And that the Cowboys got demolished 48-32, that it was their first loss at home all season, where they've been phenomenal, where Mike McCarthy has 3 12-win seasons, but is 1-3 in the postseason right now as the Cowboys head coach. This one felt like the worst of it. And 48-32 does not indicate just how big an ass-kicking this was. Dak Prescott talked about the idea of, if Mike McCarthy's job status is in question, then Dak Prescott should be too. This is the quote of McCarthy from Dak. "He's been amazing. I don't know how there can be speculation, but I understand the business. In that case, there should be about me as well. Honestly, I understand it's about winning the Super Bowl. That's the standard of the league and damn sure the standard of this place. I get it, but add me to the list in that case." Well, I mean, is that supposed to make Cowboys? Is that supposed to make Cowboys fans or the organization that paid him or any of that feel any better? Yeah, if you want to fire the coach, maybe you ought to think about firing me too. I get what he's saying. He's trying to show solidarity, but there's no real way that they can work out of Dak's situation right now. McCarthy is getting ready to head into the final year of his contract. It's not that difficult to make a change. I know players will always back, well, not always, but more often than not, back the coach that's currently in the job that they're in, but that's inexcusable, completely inexcusable. The reason why I think that, say, a Vrabel or a Harbaugh or Belichick is being most discussed if they fire Mike McCarthy, which seems very real at this point in time. We'll find out in the next couple of hours, days maybe. The reason why people like that make sense, even though ego and personality type would butt heads on the surface, Mike McCarthy's team looked unprepared last night. Take it beyond whatever stigma you have about the Dallas Cowboys and them as a disappointment in the playoffs and how frustrating it's been since their last championship in the late 90s, and on and on and on it goes. The Dallas Cowboys last night were choking dogs, flatly. The Dallas Cowboys looked to be a team that was unprepared for the moment. And while there are lots of frustrations about Belichick or Vrabel and how they go about coaching their team and the particular style or philosophical approach that they bring to those things, The one accusation that you would never lob at either of those two men is that their football teams were unprepared for the moment. Maybe they lose a close one. Maybe things get out of hand and everything's magnified because you can't score points, but never unprepared. It wasn't just that Dak and CeeDee Lamb were off message or off target together for really the first time all season. It's the fact that the defense had nothing to account for what Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur had prepared for them. It's a legitimate conversation around Mike McCarthy. And again, I get what Dak is trying to do in the solidarity elements of this. But what you see in the Cowboys is a fundamental problem and something that would make it, I think, an easy decision to be able to move on for McCarthy in favor of whomever you might decide. Preferably, I think if you're Jerry, a proven coach, I don't know that you have to have a star name in Dallas the way that you do. I know that Mark Davis is interested in. That's why the Antonio Pierce hire that seems like a layup to everybody that Mark Davis hasn't just been made by now. All of this is so fascinating to kind of dig into. But at the end of the day, a lack of preparation cannot be the talking point. We can talk about officials and how that has an unfair impact, just on general. I'm not talking about the Dallas Green Bay game. I'm just saying like things that you can discuss that impact the game that might be beyond the coach's control. There was no elements to account for in the Dome at Jerry World. There was just a team that looked like it got pantsed in front of its home crowd on national television, posing to represent the entire football-consuming country with this America's team nonsense. The biggest losers of the Super Wildcard weekend, no matter what happens, Philadelphia could lose, Nick Sirianni could get fired after all of this, and still the Dallas Cowboys would be the ones that we are pointing the finger at most today. Look around and being like, how could you embarrass yourself like that? There have been embarrassments. We've talked about the 8th one and done in the playoffs since 1998. It's as much as any franchise in professional sports. But that where shock and awe in the worst kind of way, if you're a Dallas fan, is the thing that you're kind of left with. I imagine the same kind of stunned that I know they were the 2 seed. I know it's not the number 1 overall seed after fighting through all the injuries that the Tennessee Titans did. But like, if you're talking about traumatic sports fans' experiences, I imagine that loss yesterday for Dallas was similar to what Titans fans experienced against the Cincinnati Bengals in 2021. It's that level of bad. Phone calls are welcome. Second hour coming up next. We'll get into more of things that are moving around the league. Speaking of movement around football, Kalen DeBoer was named as the next head coach at Alabama after Nick Saban's retirement announcement last week. We'll talk about the implications of that